Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us for this final session of the day. The Northern Powerhouse and what makes Manchester a driving force. We're going to start with a short film.
Nowadays, Manchester is absolutely the number one place to start a tech business because you've got massive universities.
Manchester's an awesome city. It's really booming, and it means that when we get the right people, we can keep them and they don't want to leave.
You couldn't do better than come to Manchester. Just in terms of the talent pool, it's really well placed in terms of transport links. You can fly in and out of it, you can get to places.
Great infrastructure to support fast-growing businesses, access to support, good access to finance as well.
The community seems to want you to succeed. Everyone celebrates each other's success.
There are spaces across Manchester, Media City, Federation House, the Old Granada Studios. They're all serving a really, really great purpose, and it's really, really helping to galvanise the industry.
The ecosystem that's being built, you can tell how they're really supporting these style businesses from an investment point of view, from an office space point of view.
Manchester Science Park has really strong facilities and also with plenty of room to expand.
You've got companies like Amazon, like Microsoft, opening large bases in Manchester ahead of any other UK city.
Diversity and breadth of those companies that are here. Small innovators can survive alongside those large corporates.
The My Idea Accelerator gives us the opportunity to have high-tech office space, but also to access connections with other businesses.
We started off as a small business in Manchester in 1999. We're expanding massively. We employ across the group nearly 400 people.
Tickets is a giant search engine for events and attractions. We've grown incredibly fast to over 200,000 monthly active users.
Rentalcars.com are the world's leading car hire platform.
NCC, we're the global cyber security expert.
Cubic Motion is a computer vision company. We work with all the major game publishers to deliver very realistic characters.
Peak is an artificial intelligence company. We help businesses do great things with data and grow their profits using machine learning. We've grown to become one of the biggest data science and machine learning companies in the UK and Europe.
Landlords are being smarter, developers are being smarter about making their buildings and work environments more pleasing for younger people to want to actively be there.
The future is it's entirely rosy. It's an industry that will keep growing.
Manchester as a tech destination is something that's already happening and will only continue to grow.
Thank you. If you can all take your seats. So, for those of you who don't know, I'm Katie Gallagher. I'm the Managing Director of Manchester Digital. We're the trade body for digital and technology companies across Greater Manchester. I hope I'm slightly less pale than I was in that video. It was very early in January. I'm delighted to introduce our 5 panellists. I'm going to tell you a little bit about them. First to my left is Tom Wren. He's the Managing Director of Manchester Science Partnerships. He joined MSP in 2012, and since then they have grown significantly with various developments including the Bright Building, Alderley Park, City Labs 1.0, Base and Synergy House. Tom has also played an integral role in partnerships to create the MedTech Centre, My Idea, which is a Cisco and MSP Post Accelerator Centre, and Biospace. In 2016 he became the MD of MSP, following a stint as the Associate Commercial Director. Adam Warren is the IT Director at AO.com. AO.com are an 18-year-old Bolton and Manchester-based e-commerce retailer, and they've changed the way that people buy electric goods through digital innovation with a very strong focus on customer service. Adam has been in technology for 20 years, fulfilling a number of roles in a number of different verticals. His current position at AO.com is as IT Director, and he's driving digital transformation and change through all areas of the business. Next to Adam, we have Mike. Mike Blake Crawford is the Strategy Director of Social Chain. Social Chain are probably the newest business we have on the panel. They were only formed in 2015, and in just 3 years they've grown from an initial team of 5 to over 200 staff across Manchester, London, Berlin, Munich and New York. Despite having a global reach, the organisation has chosen to headquarter in Manchester, and the heart of its operation remains here. Clients that they work with include Coca-Cola, DreamWorks, Apple Music, Superdry. It's a bit of a brand roll call, really. Any big, cool brand, social chains generally seem to have a relationship with them. Next to Mike, we've got Will. Will Lewis is the co-founder of OBI Property. OBI Property specialise in advising tech occupiers on their real estate strategies across the UK and Europe. Will has worked with some significant brands in the technology industry, working with AO, the Hut Group, NCC, Zuto, Rental Cars, UK Fast, and the Lab Bible, another roll call of fairly cool brands. OBI Property are a privately owned real estate firm specialising in advising some of the fastest growing businesses in tech and digital. The company really looks to differentiate themselves and offer a lot of support once those technology companies have landed in their business, making sure that it's actually easier for them to grow. So they're going far beyond the realm of a traditional property developer, or property agent, sorry. And finally, we have Nick Chrysos, who is the Head of Strategy and Innovation for UK and Ireland at Cisco. Nick is responsible for innovation centres and programmes across London, Manchester, Berlin, Barcelona, Istanbul and Paris, so quite a broad remit. His innovation team is currently leading 11 government-funded projects, everything from autonomous vehicles in London to the smart city in Manchester, and they're just about to begin 5G trials in Orkney. Nick believes in sustainable and responsible technology solutions, and he sits on several IoT advisory boards looking at ways that technology will transform our world. So safe to say we have a really good mix here of technology people, property people, and some who are a bit of both. We've got 30 minutes or so for a panel discussion, and at the end you'll have an opportunity to ask questions. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Tom. And my first question is, what is the attraction of Manchester, and why do you think it's been a key location for the digital and tech growth it's seen?
Thanks, Katie. So I suppose when you look at Manchester, there's four things that I always consider to be big drivers of the digital sector, and that's a long culture of innovation within the city. You know, it dates all the way back to Turing's work on the first computer, goes through the first, one of the first internet service providers. We've got a main internet exchange. There's this rich culture of digital innovation that's just run as a spine through Manchester. We've got a really good talent base, brilliant universities there producing about 10,000 graduates in STEAM subjects across the GM area. So every year you've got this healthy pipeline that's driving that growth. And then a cost base that's really attractive compared to places like London and other major cities in Europe. And then add to that, there's a maturity to it. What we've just seen in the video, we've got over 5,000 companies working in the digital space in the GM area. Of that, about 600 of them are members of Manchester Digital, and they care about propelling that momentum and carrying that forward for their sector, working on skills, working on funding. And so I think we just have that perfect storm of all the components that you need to drive a sector, and that makes it attractive to companies. And hopefully, I suppose we'll hear from the guys things that reinforce that, because they've chosen to headquarter their businesses there.
So actually just coming to Will, because you've obviously been dealing with a lot of this relocation and expansion, and we survey our members every year, and 77% of them have claimed that they've grown, and actually they can't find enough people to fill the roles that they need at the moment, though they are all expanding and moving offices. So will it be really interesting to hear about which types of companies are locating in Manchester and why you think they're making those decisions?
Yeah, I think there's a common theme right across the tech market and digital markets in the city, and those from startup to big national, international corporates, they're all growing. There is a real battle for talent, as Tom said, but we've seen a real trend from sort of e-commerce businesses which are using their tech platforms to grow. They may have call centres out in Bolton, Cheadle, Crewe, Macclesfield, but the common theme is that the techies, the people that are developing the technology for the businesses to grow, want to work in Manchester, want to work in the city. And we're actually seeing some businesses now split the operations where their customer service operations are in a different location to their technology platforms. And that's consistent from businesses that are 10 to 20 up to people like rental cars who've got 2,000 employees now working out of Manchester.
Okay, coming to you, Mike. So Social Chain is a very young business full of young people. You're already in lots of other glamorous locations across the world. So why did you build your HQ in Manchester, and what keeps you here?
Yeah, well, initially it was actually just out of residency. That's where the founders were resident. But our investors did try to move the business to London. And there was an office in Hammersmith. However, it became really clear that strategically Manchester was the optimum location for growth of Social Chain. I think there's a few reasons for that, one of which is, as Tom's alluded to, the talent pool. There, Social Chain is a very young business with an average age of 22. And I think also it's got the highest ratio of students in the UK by population size. So for us to be able to tap into that talent pool of young people and graduates has been critical to us being able to scale. Another thing is if you look at the proposition of the business, we're ultimately a media business. We have the agency function, we also have media publishing, whereas we create content and distribute it through social media. And if you look at the media landscape in the UK and you look at the development over the past 5 to 10 years, you've got places like Media City springing up down the road in Salford. For a business that wants to grow in this area, it makes a lot more sense to locate in Manchester, so we can foster those partnerships with brands like the BBC, ITV, and a lot of the creative digital hubs that are centred around the Media City area. And then finally as well, it's actually at the home of social media. A lot of people don't realise, but some of the world's biggest social media publishers are actually born out of Manchester. So you mentioned Lad Bible earlier. Their main base of operations is Manchester. Unilad as well. Joe Media have just secured a site in Spinningfields. So you look to California and you look at the tech business in Silicon Valley, you've almost got a social media alley starting up in Manchester. So for us to succeed, it's the best place to be.
Okay, Adam, you have obviously, your business has been established in Greater Manchester for a significant number of years, and you've just moved some operations to Manchester. So can you talk us a bit through that and what place, the significance of place to AO?
Yeah, so I think we've talked a lot about the importance of place already, actually. But interesting that your founder started where he was a resident, and the same was true of AO.com. So John Roberts, Bolton lad, born and bred, started AO.com 18 years ago in Bolton, and that's where our headquarters have been for the last 18 years. We spent a lot of that time creating a fantastic brand, a fantastic employer brand, and actually a fantastic tech brand. So AO is pretty much founded on two things, people and technology. To add to that, we've got some really good facilities. But despite all of this, all of our staff come from as far north as Lancaster, as far west as Southport, and as far south as Crewe. Only 2% of our technology workforce in Bolton comes from within the M60, so it's a very small proportion. The reason for that is people who live in Manchester want to work in Manchester. So for us, place is significantly important. It's the reason we opened the Riverside operation in Manchester, to try and tap into some of that fantastic talent that Manchester has. But more recently, it's become true that place isn't just the geography of where you decide to house your operation. It's about how you kit it out. Long gone are the days where a kettle and a toaster in one room is enough to attract talent. We saw on the board, on the screen earlier, all the fantastic office space that's in Manchester, and it's true. It's a real seller's market if you're in tech right now, and people are interested in working in places that are interesting to work in. And so the fit out, the design, the look and feel of a building is really important to people. When we were in Bolton and we didn't have an operation in Manchester, people actually put themselves on a waiting list to work for AO.com when we opened a Manchester office. So they were desperate to work for us, but just didn't want to move outside of Manchester. And this is where we are now. In Manchester, there's a battle going on for who can have the best offices, because that's what people are interested in from a talent perspective. We've interviewed people in Manchester before we had the Riverside building. They wanted to see the floor plans. These are technology people who want to see floor plans of an office space. So, place and space is vitally important.
Okay, so if we're moving beyond the kettles and toasters, it kind of brings us quite nicely into the fact that Manchester's been well known for its property industry, and now we're very well known for our tech industry. So we have the perfect collision on our panel to reflect that in Manchester. So it's, you know, the fact that people do want this additional capability, and we know that there are some really, really great smart ideas in our buildings. So I'm actually going to ask Will a question in terms of how has the property industry responded in terms of not just the tech business, but how have companies been looking at implementing new technology into buildings?
Pretty slowly.
The most exciting one.
Yeah, slowly overall, but I think that landlords, developers now are beginning to see just how important the tech market is. Last year was 35% of the take-up in the city, so it's about 450,000 square feet was tech digital businesses, and that's made landlords now sort of sit up and notice that they need to respond to their requirements, specific requirements. Lots of these businesses don't know how big they're going to be. We've worked with Adam where we've signed 10-year leases, and within 2 years they've sort of outgrown them by a lot, so we've had to then change sites, which hasn't been ideal. So landlords who sort of sign up to this space as a service, and those that consider themselves more operators as opposed to just hands-off landlords, I think are winning now in the market. In terms of technologies, you can see now developers they're embracing augmented reality and VR as well, so virtual reality. We've just invested actually as a business into a small VR company to help promote and market our clients' buildings, because 2 or 3 year build period is a long time, and occupiers want to be able to see how they can use that building and how it's going to look, how it's going to feel, and how they can put their mark. So technology is coming in, buildings are becoming more sophisticated, the way people can operate lifts, smart technology on some of the sort of building services, air conditioning, lighting, can mean the buildings become smart and more efficient. But I think as an industry we've been quite slow to react, but now it is beginning to happen.
Okay, and how's that changed what you do? Are you becoming like almost, because you're kind of trying to broker that relationship between a landlord and a tech company?
Yeah, I think as an advisor, you are long gone are the days where you just say, that's the rent-free period, that's how much space you need. Now you've got to look at, will that landlord support that business? And by support, it's not just about giving them the office space. It might be they need more services, they might want gym facilities, they might want some help from a hospitality point of view, customer service point of view. So I think those partnerships and picking the right landlord developer partner for the right occupier is really important.
Okay. And from an operator's perspective, Tom, how do you see prop tech is disrupting the way that you operate your buildings?
So prop tech, I think like Will said, it's been a bit sort of slow in its dawning for a lot of the developers. But now, me and Nick were talking before this panel about just how disruptive some of the technology opportunities are for you to kind of extract data from your buildings and then use that to provide a better service to the companies. One company we were just looking at downstairs that we know very well, Disruptive Technologies, good name, size of a Lego brick. And that's a 15-year battery life sensor that can give you the temperature. You can use it for proximity. You can use it for essentially touch, so you can get a response. You own the data. It's sensor as a service. And things like that. That means you can asset tag anything you're building. You can start to better understand the performance of it. And little companies like that who are moving along that journey are going to really enable us to start looking differently at what we do. Some of the stuff we're interested in is also how a building, historically has been a consumer of things like energy. We can start making them producers. We can start using photovoltaics. We can tier that onto mass energy storage solutions. And then, using that technology, take our buildings on and off grid. There's kind of cost benefits to us as a property developer for that, but also the way that we can then reflect that back to the customers. Me and Nick work, very closely and essentially have our buildings as test beds for new technology. So I'll let Nick touch on that within the sort of smart city sphere. But technology is now at that point where it will start to fundamentally disrupt our buildings. They're going to become cognitive. We're going to learn from them, and they're going to learn from the people that occupy them. And then those that will win will ultimately be the ones that can provide, that kind of enhanced service that reflects what the companies need. It's not just going to be about design. it will be about efficiency, because as they've said, how do you deal with a company that's growing at an exponential rate? The lease structure doesn't work, so we need to make the assets work better for them. And I think the price modelling will have to start reflecting that too.
Okay, so Nick is obviously an expert in the whole smart cities sphere, as Tom pointed out, but it would be really interesting from a tech point of view how you found working with the property industry. If, as Will says, they're slow to respond and it can be quite difficult, give us your perspective.
I think it has to do also with timing. It's never been a better time to really work now in the property industry. I think maybe if we take a snapshot 10 years ago or 20 years ago, the technology was not there. We have seen a major evolution in technology, and now we are reaching at the point that really it makes a lot of sense, and we see this kind of appetite from the property industry to look into what technology can do. For Cisco, we have to pretty much to make our bets when we're looking into what technology to focus on. Is it going to be manufacturing? Is it going to be healthcare? Is it going to be property? And property just now comes into a major opportunity for a large company like ours. You see, when we look into deploying technology in any kind of industry, we are looking always in this kind of 3 layers of deployment. The first one is the return of investment. There must be a hard return of investment when we deploy the technology. And when we mean hard return of investment, you either save money or you make money. So this has to be there. That's what's going to pay for the technology. And unless you have that there, the real thing that's going to really make sense, you will not be able to move forward. The second part is what we call the soft ROI, is what makes people feel good, safer, faster. This is happier. This is what you cannot really measure, but you have the satisfied occupier, the satisfied worker, the satisfied citizen. And the third one is what Tom mentioned a bit, is the transformative power of the technology. Is when now technology can change completely the way that you live, the way that you work. And we're looking into this kind of changing the future of how people are working in the future when we're looking at technology today. So now we're at the point that we have all these kind of 3 layers. Amazing technology, real return of investment, a lot of appetite from the property developers, and that's why now. I think that's the best thing about the timing.
Okay, thank you. This is kind of a question to Adam and to Mike. Do you consider have you looked at implementing technology to make it easier to manage your workforce? Have you looked at any smart technologies that you can implement that you think will help with retention or understanding the behaviours of your teams?
Not at the moment. However, we are innovating in the way that we use the space. So we've got quite a unique space in Manchester. It's quite famous for having a ball pool and a slide, and there's puppies running around. It's the ideal place for a 22-year-old to come and work. But one of the things we did find was that the open plan office structure wasn't quite working. And taking inspiration from places such as WeWork, where they have individual working pods, smaller group spaces, we've actually invested quite heavily in building a whole section of the office that allows people to find that solace if needed. And we've got these little pods where people can go and spend that time and do their work without being interrupted. But in terms of technology, that is something that we are looking at, but at the minute we've not really had the chance to implement that while we've scaled.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's all about data and analytics, really. So sensors, whether it's a human actually doing something or whether it's a sensor like the one you had a second ago, it's all about how can you use that information to better your organisation. And Will made a great point earlier. We're a fast-growing business and we're always running out of space. But if we understood how we use the space and who is using a space, we could probably structure our business more effectively. And so what we do is we try and track that in a non-personally identifiable way through things like meeting room usage. Who the hell's drinking Starbucks at like 6 in the morning and things like that, to try and optimize the workforce, the structure of our business and how we provide the office space to our business. I wouldn't say we were good at it yet, but it's certainly an opportunity for us. But it's how do we get that good, rich information? Because when you rely on people, they become kind of the weakest point of the whole process. So how can we get information more autonomously to help us kind of come up with better solutions?
Okay, so in terms of being in Manchester and both of you scaling tech businesses, what is the biggest challenge that you think is coming up? Is it going to be running out of space? Is it people?
The problem that we've had moving from Bolton to Manchester has been we've been able to recruit much faster, right? There's a bigger talent pool, therefore there's more talent to attract. So getting people through the door has actually been far easier than it has in Bolton. The real problem comes from what I alluded to earlier, which was retention. So, the country has a huge skills gap. There aren't enough people, despite us having great universities in Manchester, good apprentice programs for a number of businesses, and individual businesses training people to be good at technology. There is still a skill shortage in the country, and Manchester is no different. What that creates is almost like a merry-go-round of talent, because people look over the fence and go, I can get an extra £5,000 if I move to this business. And so for us, Manchester has been both a huge opportunity and a problem from a retention perspective. And we treat our staff really well. We apply the Richard Branson model of train people so they can leave and treat them well enough so that they don't want to. But people often do leave for money, and it is a challenge. I'm also hugely aware that I'm sat here and I'm part of that problem, right? So I've looked over the fence into Manchester and thought, what a great opportunity for us as a business. I'm going to go and have some of that talent. And as we talked about earlier, Amazon, Microsoft, everybody's looking to Manchester now to expand their operation into and tap into that talent. And I think it's a supply and demand problem. We have to work out how we're going to maintain the supply to match the demand.
Tom, given that you are located on the corridor in between two of our universities and some of those 10,000 students, what do you think? How do you think we're going to tackle that?
I think it's not just about the education system within Manchester. It's also about our global potential, and some of the challenges that we face is how do we access a global international talent base that wants to then access Manchester, and how do we make that pathway easier? Within a sort of context of Brexit, people are feeling less secure about migrating out of Europe and into the UK, and the visa pathway, as we've spoken about before, is less shored up, and the exceptional visa applications, there aren't enough to deal with that. But if you look at how other countries approach that, there is more sort of onshoring of talent to help. There is the grassroots stuff, the sector skills piece, which you yourself, very much through Manchester Digital focus on, and we at MSP in Bruntwood play a big part. We run coding clubs for 10 to 17-year-olds. We try and keep people in STEM subjects to get them through. We try and use apprenticeship opportunities to bring that talent base in. But the industry as a whole needs to be doing as much as it can to try and bring through talent, keep them in STEM subjects. Because it's not just going to be university leavers. You look at the social chain guys, their average age in 5 years' time will probably be 17, because who are the digital natives? Who are the best people at running Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook accounts? It's not me. I'm not that, that profile. And so I don't think there's one thing that's going to fix it.
Yeah, funnily enough, we spent a lot of time working with digital skills colleges within Manchester, because we found that while the graduates are still great in terms of what they offer us as a business, in terms of being able to shape people in the way that we need them for the needs of our ever-changing landscape, working with younger people has always been the preferable option. So we take on a lot of apprentices from a company called the Juice Academy, which is a partnership in Manchester which serves to plug the skills gap within 16 to 18-year-olds. And in terms of what we've seen from those staff coming in, it's actually been fantastic in terms of their output compared to some of the older people that have joined the business. But we definitely see the future in growing and nurturing the talent that exists within Manchester.
So Nick, you're the only person whose business wasn't started by a resident who then grew exponentially. You were an international business that saw the opportunity in Manchester. So how do you find the kind of talent situation, because you are bringing people into Manchester?
First, let me say that in Cisco we still like to think that we're a startup. We still like to think that we are behaving like a startup. So it's crucial that we have the same culture and we think the same way. The reason for us moving into Manchester and working with MSP and building my idea and doing all this amazing stuff and all these amazing partnerships at the moment started from at the same time with CityVerve, the Smart City project. And it was a combination between the Manchester as a city, the aggregate authority, the focus, the culture, the community, that really for us almost became a doorway to the Northern Powerhouse, or to in general to the Northern talent. At the same time, it's a city with that a lot of people mentioned before. People like to live in, which is very crucial. We moved people in Manchester. We had already a very established team in London, and I didn't force them, but we strongly recommended that it would be good, if they wanted really to stay in this arena, to move to Manchester. And I told you before, we offered them the opportunity now to move back, to move to different cities, and they all want to stay in Manchester. It is a place that allows partnerships. It is a place that has the right culture. It is a place that has the right community. And for Cisco, although we might be seen as a global kind of company, local investments, local partnerships is crucial for us to really move forward, specifically when we're talking about new technologies, new opportunities. So Manchester for us is an ideal place to really focus on, and we're investing with the new innovation center. That is not only one of the innovation centers in Europe and one of the innovation centers in the world. What we're doing in My Idea in Manchester is leading the way not only in Europe, but worldwide. We have innovation centers in Toronto, in Rio, in Singapore, in Sydney, in Perth. What we're doing in My Idea, the partnerships and the way that we are moving now startups from the brilliant idea to something that they can deliver to giant customers is very unique for us, and I like to think that it's very unique for the industry. So My Idea is spearing kind of the way, is driving the way of what innovation center will look in the future.
So just sticking with that, and that investment into My Idea, can you talk to us a bit about some of the transformative? We're kind of coming to close now, so I want to finish on a high with all of the really great stuff you're doing. So could you talk to us a bit about some of those really transformative innovations that are coming out of that facility?
Well, in My Idea, although we have CityVerve, which is the smart city, and CityVerve has been the most ambitious kind of smart city project in UK. And I like to think worldwide, but I cannot really say it, so I'll say in UK. More than 120 use cases just in a single project, from transportation to healthcare to energy environment. When we look into property, as we are now, very much property focused, the things that we're doing with energy into the Bright building, with My Idea, with the introduction of an amazing battery, with the amazing software managing this battery, with abilities to balance the electricity consumption within the building, but also provide the electricity back to the grid. These are things that we are leading in UK, and these are some of the use cases that they are a combination of the Bright building, MSP partnership, My Idea, and CityVerve as a project. A lot more. I mean, I can spend hours telling you about all the different cool stuff that we are doing there. But I have to say, the energy work that we are specifically applying in the Bright building is one of the highlights of the complete project. Unfortunately, we cannot give too many details at the moment. We're in embargo because of some of the technology elements there, but hopefully a month from now you will hear a lot more about it.
Okay, we will keep an ear out for that. Probably we'll start with you, Tom, then, for your prediction and what's going to happen in Manchester for the next 12 months.
I just think continued growth of the sector. What we're seeing is massive market take-up, but also, as Nick said, companies coming through My Idea. We've got energy companies like Steamaco. We've got new sort of social media companies like Wattle. These are, very smart, very disruptive little companies that have the potential, like Social Chain, to scale at pace. So I don't think there's one specific vertical in Manchester. I mean, we're really strong on the e-commerce side. People like AO, Misguided, Boohoo. Really strong companies are already operating there, but I think it's just a spread across all of those verticals, and certainly more, spin-out activity from the university, because there's been a great legacy of companies taking IP out of the University of Manchester and forming, and we've got a couple sort of, oven ready now that look like they're going to go really well, and also just recently, Cubic Motion, who took IP from the university. They're a facial animation company. They are flying at the moment. Got 20 million of investment just before Christmas, and they are a rapidly growing company that are world leading in what they do. So I think what we're just going to see is continued growth across the sectors. So we're really excited, to see that.
Okay, Will, how do you think it's going to look for you in the next 12 months?
I think Manchester's in a really good place to continue its success in the tech market in particular. We're dealing with, just as a small independent business, probably 600,000 to 700,000 square feet of live office requirements, which is big, which goes from the city centre out down to Manchester Airport, and I think it'll be the driving force for Manchester's office take-up for some time now.
Okay. Mike, same question to you.
Yeah, just to echo everybody else's thoughts, I think growth is something that we're expecting over the next 12 months. We've got quite high growth targets. We're expecting our headcount to double in Manchester over the next 12 months, and with that in mind, we've secured additional space within our building, both across our floor and beneath it. So we've got very exciting plans of what to do with that space. A lot of our focus in terms of innovation is within data and research. So by proxy of having one of the biggest networks of social media publishing pages in the world with 400 million followers, we have access to a lot of data, and through AI and machine learning, we're actually able to start to make use of that and understand emotion and what people are thinking about specific subjects, and that's something we're looking to invest in 2018.
Adam?
Tech isn't going to slow down, right? The world's changing faster than it ever has before. For anyone who's not familiar with Moore's law, it's true, So tech is going to continue to grow, as is Manchester. I think something Will touched on earlier, so if I can make a prediction a reality, it's very hard to predict exactly what you're going to need and how long you're going to need it for. And if I want to buy a compute, I can buy it per second. If I want to buy office space, I'll buy it for 10 years. There's a huge disparity between those two things. So I think flexible, more commoditized, resource in terms of property space is something that I hope is going to start to happen in Manchester and attract more businesses into the area.
Okay, thank you. We've got time to take a few questions before we wrap up. So has anybody got a question for anyone on our panel? Any questions? Hi.
Well, thanks to the panel for kind of articulating some of Manchester's great strengths in tech. Do you think the rest of the world know this? And if not, what do we need to do to promote that message more widely?
Who would like to answer that one?
So some of the work we do with Midas is about getting out into country, out of country, as it were, and flying the flag for Brand Manchester. It's why we're here today, part of the Manchester family, and it's why we go to big conferences like South by Southwest, which runs at the same time as MIPIM, so we have different team members there, but also going out to see kind of life science companies at Advamed or at Bio. It's all about getting out into market and spreading the message. I think, to your question, do they know about it? I think in Europe, people are really starting to wake up to the fact that Manchester is a leading digital city. And it's not just a second city, it is punching above its weight and growing with momentum that means that it's now so mature that it will sustain itself. Can we improve upon that and speed it up? Yes, and that's through, I think, things like improving the talent pipeline, but also through work like what Bruntwood and Cisco do together, which is innovative projects, vehicle-to-grid charging, 5G test beds, smart city projects, autonomous vehicle projects. All of these things, if we show that Manchester is an adopter, a willing test bed for technology, then that will ultimately mean that companies want to see, want to put people in there, because why would an Amazon want to, work on the next neighborhood? Because they want to get the data out of it. And so I think, we've got to provide a fertile environment and an open environment, and then be willing to share that data.
I think you make a really good point on that, though, because I think the problem we've had historically with the tech industry is the people that are doing the really clever stuff, it's below the radar and they're just getting on with it. And it's being able to gather those stories and talk about our niches in a really kind of compelling and expert way, because there's some really, I think it's safe to say we're really, really booking a lot of the Brexit kind of predictions. And, we've still got companies moving here at scale. And actually they're coming because they know we've got strong analytics capability. They know that we've got excellent digital marketing capability. And we're training people in really, really good niches. And I do think we need to talk far more about that. Anybody else wish to add anything to? Okay, any more questions? Okay, so that means that we will actually almost finish on time, which is a really good thing. I just think it's. I think it would be really good to say, you know, what do you think? What do you think is going to be the best thing for the science park over the next kind of the next immediate win for you?
Well, we spoke about City Labs this morning, and coming months we've got a big announcement there. But I think the thing that gets me most excited is the new neighbourhood we've got at the top of the Oxford Road corridor, Circle Square. We've got a major development there, you know, that is like a spinning field, but on the Oxford Road corridor, where we're going to have a lot of tech and engineering companies start to occupy that space in the future. And it's also a chance for us to start to embed more of these technologies. So from a Bruntwood and MSP perspective, I think the thing I get most excited about is what's happening at the top of the corridor over the next few years.
Okay. So I think I would just like to thank all of our 5 panellists. Thank you very much for all your thoughts and contributions. And I think the really exciting thing is that given that 45% of Manchester tech companies have already said that they felt negative impacts of Brexit, actually hearing that hasn't stopped them from planning to grow and that hasn't stopped them from planning to expand their operations here is really, really encouraging. And I think, I hope we've managed to think about giving lots of property people things to think about, and also people who are thinking about moving to Manchester. There are some absolute experts here to come and speak to. Thank you all very much.